The crystal wine glass felt colder than it should have as it rested between my fingers, like it somehow understood what was coming before I did. My father's voice sliced through the elegant murmur of the upscale restaurant, cutting every pretense of calm I had forced myself to maintain. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, shimmering against the polished marble, but their glow did nothing to soften the blow of his words. "Tonight," he said, lifting his glass with a pride that was as false as the smile stretching across his face, "we celebrate our real daughter, the successful one." There it was. A sentence designed not to honor Tiffany, but to wound me. A weapon disguised as a toast. A ringing filled my ears, muffling the polite applause that followed. 20 relatives, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, turned toward my sister Tiffany with theatrical admiration. My mother dabbed her eyes delicately with her napkin, pretending to be overwhelmed with pride, though nothing could hide the rehearsed stiffness in her posture. Tiffany simply bowed her head with soft humility, the kind she wore like jewelry, expensive, polished, and manufactured. "My name is Lauren. I am 32 years old, an entrepreneur, a survivor of my own bloodline's arrogance. And this is the story of how I took back everything they once stripped from me: respect, dignity, and power." I sat at the far edge of the long oak table, almost an afterthought in my own family. The weight of humiliation pressed on my chest, yet my spine remained straight. Owen, my husband, sat beside me, his hand finding my knee beneath the table. His touch was steady, grounding me. He didn't need theatrics or applause. His strength was the kind that didn't shout, it resonated. My father continued, swirling his overpriced Cabernet like he was conducting an orchestra everyone worshipped. "The world should know the difference between ambition and wasted potential," he smirked. He didn't need to say my name. His glance was enough, sharp, dismissive, almost triumphant. He wanted me to break. He wanted my silence. He wanted my insignificance. But beneath the sting, something darker and stronger unfolded inside me. Not shame, not fear. Fury. Tiffany leaned forward, perfect pearl earrings catching the candlelight, her voice dipped in sweet poison. What is it you do again?" "Freelancing." Her tone held that distinct flavor of someone who believed they were untouchable. Laughter whispered around the table like wind brushing dry leaves. My own cousin dropped his gaze, ashamed to even witness the cruelty. "Something like that," I replied, keeping my voice calm, though my fingers trembled slightly around my knife. Tiffany nodded, satisfied. "Well, not everyone can be vice president at Dalton and Ross." My father raised his glass toward her again. "Exactly. You've made this family proud." I watched my mother look at me, just for a moment, and then quickly look away. That flicker of embarrassment in her eyes cut deeper than anything Tiffany had said. Owen leaned in closer, his lips barely moving. "You don't have to sit through this." I smiled faintly. "Oh, I want to see how far they'll go." The waiter returned with champagne, and my father's voice boomed again. "To Tiffany, and to the company that made her who she is." Everyone cheered. Except Owen. Except me. The room swirled in noise, but inside me, a stillness formed. A cold, clear space where logic sharpened and instinct woke up. Years of being compared, dismissed, underestimated, all of it converged into a single, razor-sharp moment. Owen's hand tightened over mine, steady and sure. He leaned close, his breath brushing my ear with a whisper meant only for me. "Time to tell them we bought their company." Time froze. The restaurant faded into a blur. My father's laughter, Tiffany's smug smile, the clinking of forks against china, all of it melted into background noise. I turned to Owen slowly, meeting the calm certainty in his eyes. This wasn't a bluff. It was reality. I inhaled deeply and set my glass down with deliberate quietness. "Dad." He looked at me mid-sip, annoyance flickering. "Funny thing about Dalton and Ross," I said, my voice soft but cutting. "It changed ownership last week." The table fell silent instantly. Forks hovered in midair. My father lowered his glass, frowning. "What are you talking about?" Owen leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table with effortless authority. She's saying we bought it. Every share. Every asset. The air thickened. Tiffany blinked rapidly, her expression contorting from confusion to disbelief. You're lying, she whispered, voice trembling. Owen smiled calmly. You'll find out Monday morning at your board meeting. We'll be there. Your assistant already confirmed your attendance. My father's glass hit the table with a sharp crack. You what? I sat back, steady, my pulse slowing into a calm that felt almost supernatural. You should be careful who you call real family, Dad. Turns out the daughter you call a failure just signed your paychecks. Silence followed, heavy, poetic. Owen lifted his champagne. To family. No one else raised their glass. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need them to. After leaving the restaurant, sleep became a stranger. My mind replayed every expression on their faces, every flicker of shock that rippled through the room the moment the truth dropped. The echo of the silence, my father's silence, clung to me long after the night had dissolved. I stood by the kitchen window the next morning, watching early sunlight slide across our backyard. The house, normally peaceful, felt charged with unspoken anticipation. My phone buzzed repeatedly, calls from my father, unread messages from Tiffany, yet the device remained face down on the counter. Owen moved about the kitchen with his usual composed efficiency, stirring his coffee slowly, observing me without pressuring me to speak. He had that rare energy that didn't invade your space, yet filled the room with strength. They'll come, he murmured, as though reading my thoughts. People like that can't sit with silence. Pride is loud even when it tries to whisper. And right on cue, the front gate camera chimed sharply. On the screen, my father's massive black SUV rolled up the driveway, followed closely by Tiffany's pristine white coupe. Of course they came together. Crisis had a way of uniting them, just never for me. Owen didn't flinch, didn't straighten his shirt, didn't prepare some diplomatic facade. He simply adjusted his tie like he was getting ready for another routine meeting. Calm, controlled, dangerous in the most elegant way possible. The doorbell didn't ring, it slammed. One long, hostile, undeniable blow. I exhaled once and opened the door. My father stormed inside before I even stepped back fully, his face flushed with fury, a thick folder clutched in his hand like evidence he planned to use as a weapon. Tiffany followed, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, her perfume so strong it felt like she was trying to mask something. Fear, maybe. You think this is some kind of joke? My father barked, throwing the folder onto the kitchen island. Papers spilled out dramatically, as though chaos could make his arguments stronger. You walk into my dinner, humiliate me in front of everyone, and now you're spreading lies. Lies? I asked, walking around him calmly. Come inside, let's talk like adults. Tiffany scoffed and tossed her hair. Dad, seriously, don't waste your time. There's no way they bought Dalton and Ross. The board would have informed me already. Owen leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms loosely. Check your email. Tiffany rolled her eyes, but her fingers trembled the moment she tapped her screen. Her expression shifted instantly, her face draining of its perfect glow. Her eyes scanned the subject line 3, 4, 5 times. Ownership transfer notice, she whispered. This must be a mistake. It's very real, Owen replied smoothly. The chairman was retiring. We offered terms he couldn't refuse. My father turned toward me, voice rising, tone breaking. You planned this behind my back. I met his gaze without blinking. You ensured I had nothing left to lose. You made mockery of my dreams. You dismissed me. You forgot that quiet people don't disappear, they evolve. He slapped the counter, the sound echoing. You think this changes anything? You think money makes you better than us? No, I said softly. It makes me independent. That struck him harder than any insult could. Tiffany wasn't done. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You ruined my career. Do you have any idea what I did for that company? I worked for everything. I laughed under my breath. You worked for Daddy's approval. There's a difference. Owen stepped forward, his voice low and steady. We didn't buy the company to hurt you. We bought it because it needed saving from the nepotism and arrogance that were suffocating it. My father's eyes bulged. You don't speak to me like that in my own. Owen cut him off with surprising calm. This isn't your company anymore, and respect is earned, not demanded. A thick silence settled over the room. Even the refrigerator hum felt louder than their breathing. For the first time, I saw not my father, the towering giant I grew up fearing, but a man cornered by the consequences of his own actions. The edges of his pride were cracking, crumbling like an old wall finally collapsing under its own weight. Dad, I said carefully, I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this to show you that underestimation is a dangerous habit. He stared at me, really stared, as though seeing me for the first time in years. Yet instead of apology, regret, or even understanding, his face hardened in denial. He walked out of the house without another word. Tiffany, however, stopped at the doorway. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. You'll regret this, I promise you. She slammed the door, so hard the picture frames rattled against the wall. But the silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was liberating. Owen slipped his arm around my waist. You handled that better than most CEOs I've worked with. I didn't smile, not yet. I watched their cars vanish through the gate. Peace feels strange when you're not used to it. He nodded. Give it time. He was right. There was more to face. The board meeting was next. The next morning, the city skyline glimmered as we drove toward Dalton and Ross headquarters. An entire year of planning, negotiations, legal reviews, and silent strategy now condensed into this one day. The sun rose behind the towers like a spotlight on a stage where everything would change. The lobby was a glossy maze of marble and glass. Employees paused mid-step when they saw us, recognition flickering in their eyes. Some whispered. Some stared openly. Others nodded respectfully, silently welcoming change. We entered the boardroom together. The long mahogany table stretched across the room like a battleground, every seat filled with executives in crisp suits, some stiff with discomfort, others visibly relieved. People knew when leadership was toxic. They just never had the power to say it. At the far end sat my father and Tiffany. He looked furious. She looked terrified. Both were holding onto the last threads of authority they no longer possessed. Owen opened the meeting with calm authority. Good morning. As of last Friday, my wife and I are the majority shareholders. We're here to discuss the next steps. Tiffany slammed her pen onto the table. You cannot just waltz in here and... Owen interrupted gently. No one is waltzing. We're simply taking our rightful seats. A ripple of muted laughter spread across the room. Watching Tiffany's composure crack was not pleasant, but it was necessary. My father finally stood, voice booming. You don't know what you're doing. Your children playing with a company I spent decades building. I looked him dead in the eyes. 30 years of favoritism, 30 years of promoting the wrong people, 30 years of building a fragile empire based on vanity. We're here to stabilize what you destabilized. He trembled with rage. You think you can run a corporation when you couldn't even run your life. Owen stood beside me. She rebuilt her life from nothing. That makes her more qualified than anyone here. The CFO cleared his throat nervously. Actually, Mr. Dalton, the company's profits have declined steadily under your daughter's leadership. We have the reports. Tiffany turned pale. That's not possible. I stepped forward slightly. You ignored the employees. You overspent on luxuries. You appointed unqualified friends. That ends today. My father clenched his fists. So you'll fire us? No, I replied. I don't need revenge. I need structure. You'll stay on as consultants for 6 months under strict supervision. Tiffany's voice cracked. You're destroying my life. No, I said calmly. You're finally experiencing the real world. The board members nodded subtly, relief washing over their expressions. Owen concluded the meeting. Effective immediately, there will be ethical restructuring, fair wages, and transparent leadership. My wife will lead the transition. Applause erupted, genuine applause. something this company probably hadn't experienced in years. As the meeting ended, I walked past my father without a word. He didn't look up. Tiffany stared at her phone, scrolling through messages, likely reading colleagues telling her that power moves fast and she had just been left behind. Owen opened the door for me. "You okay?" I finally smiled, better than I've ever been. We stepped into the sunlight, and for the first time, it didn't feel harsh. It felt like freedom. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of decisions, restructuring, uncomfortable adjustments, and a slow but undeniable shift in power dynamics. Rumors ran wild in the hallways of Dalton and Ross. Some employees whispered that I would be strict. Others believed I was too soft-hearted to lead. Many wondered if my father would sabotage everything from behind the scenes. And Tiffany, well, she was the loudest rumor topic of all. She had always loved attention, but she had never known what to do with responsibility. Now she had neither. I arrived at the building one crisp morning, my heels clicking sharply on the marble floors. Employees stepped aside politely, not out of fear, but out of respect, a respect I had never tasted in my family home. Owen was already inside the conference room, reviewing reports with the finance team. His presence always created a sense of order in a room, like gravity choosing one person to orbit around. As I pushed open the conference room door, they all rose slightly, acknowledging me. Owen glanced up, his eyes softening instantly in a way that was for me alone. "Everything ready for the employee review meeting?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes, but be prepared. Not everyone will adapt easily." He wasn't wrong. Some of my father's old loyalists were waiting like wolves for the first sign of vulnerability. And no matter how calm I appeared, I still felt a tremor deep inside. Old childhood fears of disappointing him, of being mocked, of being dismissed. But leadership demanded I silence those ghosts. The meeting began with a hum of murmurs from dozens of staff members. The room was full: engineers, managers, interns, analysts. People who had worked loyally for years. People who had been ignored, overlooked, and underpaid under the old regime. I stepped up to the podium, scanning their faces. Some hopeful, some doubtful, some tired, but all waiting. "Thank you for being here," I began. "I want to start by saying something you may not expect from someone in my position." The room fell silent. "I'm not here to control you. I'm here to rebuild with you." A ripple of surprise moved across the crowd. I know there have been mistakes, failures in communication, favoritism, financial mismanagement. But that changes today. We rise together or we fall together. This time the silence was warm, listening, absorbing. Owen glanced at me with quiet pride. I continued, "Starting next month, salaries across all departments will be reassessed. Promotions will be based on performance, not connections. Harassment or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated." A strong murmur spread, this time full of relief and disbelief. "And most importantly," I added, "my office door will always be open. I'm not above you, I am one of you." Applause erupted, not polite, not forced, but real. A sound that filled my chest with something I had never received from my own father: validation. But the applause had barely settled when a sharp voice cut through the room. "This is ridiculous." "Tiffany." She stood near the back, arms crossed, eyes burning with resentment. "This company ran perfectly fine before you barged in with your hero complex," she snapped. "These people," she gestured dramatically, "don't need fake promises, they need strong leadership. And Dad provided that. You're destroying everything." A few staff members shrank back, uncomfortable. Others stood a little straighter, ready to defend the change. I held her stare, refusing to react emotionally. "Tiffany," I said calmly, "you are welcome to contribute as long as it is productive." "That's the problem," she shouted. "You think you're superior now, you think money makes you better." "No," I corrected softly. "It makes me independent." The same words I used before. This time, they slid through the room like a blade wrapped in silk. Tiffany trembled with rage. "Everyone sees through this. You're a joke, a nobody trying to play CEO." Owen stepped toward her, voice firm but not unkind. "Tiffany, please step outside. This is a professional environment." She ignored him and lunged forward, pointing at me. "You think you won? You think buying the company gives you power? You will never erase where you came from. You will always be the daughter Dad rejected." A hush fell so heavy it could suffocate. My chest tightened, but not with pain, with realization. She was not angry at me. She was terrified of becoming irrelevant. I breathed in deeply and responded with steady composure. "Tiffany, my goal was never to erase you. It was to stop being erased." The room stilled. Something in her expression cracked, just a tiny fracture, but enough to reveal the truth beneath the rage. She was hurting. She pushed past everyone and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The meeting ended with reassurance from Owen and the HR team. People left the room with cautious optimism, some even smiling at me directly. A new atmosphere was taking root. That evening, the city lights reflected off the tall glass windows of my office. I stood there alone, watching the streets below. Owen entered silently and placed a small cup of tea beside me. He knew I didn't need words, just presence. "You did well today," he murmured. "Did I?" I whispered. "It all feels so fragile." "New beginnings always do." I sighed. "Tiffany hates me more now." "She doesn't hate you," he said. "She hates losing control. There's a difference." I nodded slowly. He was right, he usually was. But I also knew something deeper was stirring, something unresolved, something dangerous. My phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number. "You think it's over, Lauren. You have no idea what's coming." I stared at the screen, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Owen looked over my shoulder, reading the message with narrowed eyes. "Who sent it?" "I don't know," I whispered. But I had a feeling. It wasn't my father. It was Tiffany. This was someone else. Someone in the shadows. Someone who didn't want change. Owen placed a protective hand on my shoulder. "We'll handle it, one thread at a time." I nodded, locking my jaw, refusing to show fear. Because I understood something now. Power refuses to die quietly. And mine had just begun to rise. The final confrontation came like a storm that had been gathering for years, and now it finally broke open with thunder that shook the walls of everything she had built. Arya stood in the center of the dimly lit hall where every betrayal, every lie, and every manipulation had slowly poisoned her life. The echoes of her past still clung to the air like fog, memories whispering in corners she could no longer ignore. Vanessa had arrived earlier than expected, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, her voice already dripping with that familiar venom. "So this is where it ends for you," she taunted, arms crossed, smirk widening. "All your sacrifices, all your work, all wasted." But Arya didn't flinch this time. Something inside her had changed, broken, healed, and rebuilt differently. She met Vanessa's eyes with a calmness that was almost terrifying. "No," she said quietly, "this is where it ends for you." Vanessa's eyebrows raised, but before she could respond, the hidden door behind Arya slid open and Jacob stepped out with documents, voice recordings, and financial ledgers, proof of every single illegal transaction Vanessa had orchestrated through Arya's business. Vanessa froze, the color draining from her face. You wouldn't dare," she stammered. "This will destroy the family name." Arya took a step forward, her voice steady. "You destroyed it the moment you tried to destroy me." Vanessa lunged toward the documents, but Arya moved with a calm grace, stepping aside while security, previously loyal to Vanessa, now turned to Arya's side and blocked her path. Vanessa looked around wildly, realizing she was alone now. The power she had boasted about for years evaporated like smoke in the wind. "You were nothing without me," she spat, voice cracking. Arya held her gaze. "And I became everything in spite of you." Jacob handed Arya the final file, a legal takeover transferring complete ownership to her. For the first time in years, Arya felt her lungs fill with real freedom. No chains, no shadows, no whispers holding her hostage. Vanessa collapsed onto a chair, eyes glassy, disbelief shaking through her like an earthquake. "You think you've won?" she whispered bitterly. Arya looked at her, not with anger, but with something far more powerful, pity. Winning was never the point, she said. Surviving you was. She turned and walked away, leaving Vanessa in the ruins of her own deception. The heavy doors closed behind Arya, and with each step down the long corridor, she shed another layer of pain, another scar of betrayal. The world outside was bright, almost blinding, after the darkness she endured for so long. Jacob walked beside her, not as a savior, but as a witness to her strength. "You did it," he said softly. Arya finally smiled, a real smile, not the polite mask she had worn for years. "I didn't just do it," she replied. "I rebuilt myself from nothing." Moments later, as she reached the entrance of the hotel she once feared to walk into, journalists swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones waving. But this time she wasn't the scared girl forced out by her sister. She was the rightful owner. She was the survivor. She was the storm. When reporters asked how she felt about taking over the empire and exposing her own blood, Arya answered with a voice steady and clear. "Family isn't defined by blood. It is defined by loyalty." The crowd erupted. Arya walked forward into a future she finally controlled. The doors behind her closed, not just physically, but symbolically. That chapter of abuse, manipulation, and fear was over. And for once, life wasn't demanding strength from her. It was finally offering peace. In the reflection of the glass, she saw herself, not broken, not lost, but powerful. A woman who chose herself. A woman who won without becoming the monster she fought. A woman reborn. And that was the true victory.